It's 11 p.m. in Los Angeles, 11 a.m. in Sochi, and 4 on a Friday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gun-young. This is Arirang, Korea's only global network. The last event on the second day of reunions for families separated since the Korean War is underway as we speak at North Korea's Mount Kumgang Resort. That means the participants are facing just one more day with the relatives they haven't seen in more than 60 years, 64 to be exact. For more on the day's events, let's go live on the phone with our Shin Se-min from the News Center. Se-min, give us the latest.
Yes, a couple of hours ago, the separated families finished up their last meals of the three-day event together. And just a few minutes ago, a group ceremony for all the families began at an auditorium in the Mount Kumgang Resort. It's been a full day for the separated families. Earlier this morning, in the first session of the day, the family members were able to meet individually with one another in their hotel rooms, and they used this opportunity to exchange gifts. Most of the South Korean families gave medical-related products, snacks, and clothing, while most of the North Koreans gave gift sets that were provided by the North Korean regime. So once again, the families are meeting right now for a group event. And once that wraps up around 6 p.m. today, the participants will have one more chance to meet with their family members for just 1 hour on Saturday before the part ways.
Now, and we had an unexpected event earlier this morning when two of the South Korean participants had to return to the South earlier than scheduled.
Yes, that's right. That came during the first session this morning when health problems forced two South Korean participants to cut their reunions short. A 91-year-old man and an 84-year-old woman did get to meet individually with their loved ones from the North yesterday and today, but had to do so in ambulances this morning. It's another reminder that time is running out for the many families who have been waiting for more than 60 years to reconnect with their relatives, and most of those waiting are now in their 80s and 90s. And time is also running out on this round of reunions. The first group of families will return to their homes tomorrow. Then a second round of reunions with new participants will begin on Sunday and run through Tuesday. Kanyang?
Right, I mean, I think this only highlights the need for, making this a regular event, this inter-Korean family reunions, as, out of the 83 who left for North Korea yesterday, where I was there at the inter-Korean border, 25 of them were above the average age of 90. And so, I think this needs to come at a fast pace and it needs to be done as quickly as possible. All right, Shin Se-min reporting live on the inter-Korean family reunions taking place as we speak at the North Korea's Mount Kumgang Resort. Thank you so much. Now, in light of the landmark reunions for families separated since the Korean War, we wanted to take an in-depth look into the demographics as well as the economic gap between the two Koreas. For that, we're joined live in the studio by Dr. Byoung-joo, the head of KL&P Consulting and our regular commentator on this program. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
Now, at the inter-Korean family reunion, we hear that, a lot of the North Korean relatives who were to meet South Koreans from here could not make it because they had either, passed away or were too old age, or too fragile to come to the event. And what is the difference in lifespan and I suppose expectancies between South and North Korea as of now?
That's a very important question. And what happens is almost every year, Korea's government statistical office, Statistics Korea, publishes their latest findings about the differences between the two Koreas. And last year in December, they published a new publication. And from there, the difference is really astonishing, totally. The bottom line is both men and women, seems to be a lifespan difference of over 12 years. 12 years is, assuming that we live right above, on average, 70 years old, 12 years means like a 1/6 difference. And that's a huge difference. And you mentioned at these family reunions, people who are there often are in their mid or late 80s and even in their 90s. And these are the people who are actually living well beyond the average. What we find out in South Korean government publication is that in South Korea, men's average life expectancy is, as of last year, 77.8 years. As compared to North Korean men, that's 65.6 years. So that's 12.3 years difference. And for women, of course, South Korean women is one of the longest living female population in the world, getting close to it. South Korean women live on average 84.7 years, as opposed to North Korean women who live 72.4 years. So that's again 12.3 years difference. So there's a huge difference. Additionally, there are, in terms of like, fertility rate, for instance, number of babies a female gives birth to. In South Korea, it's a 1.3, as opposed to North Korea's 2 babies. And there are all this interesting, the demographic data. But one of the things that I have to mention here is infant mortality. From 2010 to 2015, on average, in Korea, we're expecting out of 1,000 babies, 3.4 fertilities, infant mortality, as opposed to in North Korea, 22. So that's 7 times higher infant mortality we are talking about in North Korea.
Now, I'm sure life expectancies have much to do with overall health condition differences as well. I mean, can we take people's average height, for instance, as an important indicator of their physical or health condition?
There have been many different reports about the height differences between the 2 populations in the North and South Korea here. And it's very difficult, however, to come up with exact heights because of the measurement problems in the North. But there are many different demographers who have tried this. And basically what they found is actually the South Korean male and the North Korean male, there seems to be a difference. This is a big gap, big range, but somewhere between 3 to 8 centimeters. And especially the children who are at the age of before entering the school, South Korean male children seem to be at least 4 centimeters taller than North Korean male children. And the female children, again, the difference would be about 3 centimeters. And that means a lot in terms of like infant time nutrition, for instance. It makes a huge difference. And that height difference itself is telling us how much there is a gap in terms of nutrition at the age of these infants. And one more interesting thing that I want to add is now they're saying possibly South Korean women's average height may be catching up with or exceeding now the average height of North Korean men.
Now, let's move on to the bigger picture, the total population, the demographics. We know that the South has twice as many as people as North Korea.
Right.
How does this, I'm sure it affects the economy, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, population size, of course, determines overall economic activities and so on. And that's why China has such a great, large size economy for sure. And as you mentioned, the population size here in South Korea is 50 million versus 24 million in the North. So that's twice as many as you mentioned. And that results in, of course, big differences in economic size. But of course, because of the economic system and then, the success and the failure, in the success in the South and failure in the North, we have a huge difference here. In terms of gross national income, in South Korea, it's 1.2 quadrillion won in South Korean currency, as compared to 33 trillion won in the North. So that's close to 40 times difference. 38 times to be exact difference in terms of overall gross national income between the South and North Korea. And the per person, per capita income difference, we see about 20 times difference between South and North Korea. So not only the population, but even bigger the differences are found, which we have known all along on the economic side.
I'm sure the biggest differences would be found on the trade front, right? Right,
exactly. I mean, we know South Korea is very much a heavily trade-dependent economy as opposed to North Korea, which is an almost autarkic economy, which doesn't do trade as much. The size differences we see is overall trade. South Korea, as of last year, conducts about $1 trillion US dollar worth of trade, as opposed to $6 billion US dollar worth of trade that North Korea conducts. On the export side, South Korean export records about $547 US billion, as opposed to North Korea's export of less than 3 billion US dollars. And import side, similar differences. So we are talking about huge difference, especially on the trade side.
Now, what about the infrastructure and energy side of things?
Interesting differences and interesting big differences as well as small differences here. Because overall, for instance, the roads, interesting thing is, you don't have measurements for road conditions, but length of roads. Interesting thing is South Korea seems to have only 4 times lengthier roads than North Korea here. So, but of course, when we consider the overall quality of roads, I'm sure there's huge difference here. And in terms of the ships we have, tonnage differences in terms of shipping capabilities. Korea builds lots of ships and then export them all overseas, it looks like. So what we have here in South Korea, if you compare with North Korea, it's about 16 times more of shipping capability we have. And in terms of energy production capability, South Korea has 11 times larger size than North Korea. And what that means, we have to be careful about that, is energy production capability does not exactly mean actual energy use. North Korea has considerably large size energy production capability considering their size of economy, but they're not fully running them. So the capability itself is about 11 times difference between North and South, but actual energy use would be hugely different. And just as the last point, North Korea produces about 10 times more coal than South Korea.
Well, despite all, I think the South Korean president described a possible reunification of the two Koreas as a bonanza. But, just because you mentioned coal, I think because of their abundance of natural resources compared to the South.
We'll burn more coal?
We'll burn more coal, yeah. But we can definitely co-work to make the best use of the natural resources that they have and the economic advancement that we have in the South.
Absolutely.
All right, Dr. Kim Byoung-joo, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
With rapid changes in the global economy, up-to-date business and financial news has never been more essential. See what's making markets tick around the globe. We speak to the experts and cover the biggest financial stories.
North Korea provocation.
Quite good. We received a lot of positive feedback, especially from those abroad.
The Korean government is up in arms about remarks made by a top Japanese official in which he suggested re-examining Tokyo's 1993 apology for the Japanese military's use of sex slaves during World War II. Arirang News, Kim Hyun-bin reports.
In 1993, Japan's then Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Kono apologized for the tens of thousands of women that were forced into sexual slavery during World War II. But on Thursday, Tokyo's current Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said the Japanese government will re-examine the so-called Kono statement to verify the accuracy of interviews given by Korean women who said they were forced to serve as prostitutes for Japan's wartime military.
We will assemble a team of government officials and experts to re-examine the 1993 statement from an academic standpoint.
Seoul has condemned Tokyo for making moves to take back its apology and disregard its imperialistic past and historical wrongdoings. Unlike Japan, Germany has made and continues to apologize for its wartime atrocities and compensates victims to this day. In a separate issue, Korea has slammed the Japanese government's plan to hold its controversial Takeshima Day ceremony on Saturday, an attempt to claim Korea's Tokdo Island as their own. Takeshima is the name Japan uses for Tokdo Island. Korea's foreign ministry has also slammed Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's plans to send cabinet members to the annual event. The Korean government is calling on Japan to cancel the ceremony, but Tokyo has dismissed Seoul's demand, saying the celebration does not concern other nations. Korea reclaimed sovereignty over its territory, including Tokdo and many other islands around the Korean peninsula, upon its independence from Japanese rule in 1945. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
A bill in the U.S. state of Virginia that requires all new textbooks to use the name East Sea alongside the Sea of Japan when referring to the body of water between Korea and Japan is likely to be signed by the governor by the end of this month. Our Kim Hyun-woo spoke with a public school official in Virginia to discuss the impact it will have on students.
Textbook publishers supplying new textbooks to Virginia's public schools in 2016 will be required to add the name East Sea to reference the body of water separating Korea and Japan alongside the name Sea of Japan. This means by 2017, students will likely see both names in maps and history books and atlases. Since 6 other schools in the region also purchased textbooks from the same big-name publishers, the move will affect 7 states in total. An education official from Fairfax County, Virginia, where 40,000 out of 1.1 million residents are Korean, believes the change will have a positive impact on students.
I think it's helpful to have the EC designation in the textbooks because we are a very diverse community, and in addition, it's good for students to hear other perspectives, why certain populations might feel a way about a name. I think it brings up a good conversation topic in the classroom.
High support from Korean American voters in electing Virginia's new governor also played a role in passing the bill.
It's more of a political issue in Virginia. Our current Korean American population in Virginia is 82,000. Our Japanese American population is only 19,000. So I think it was easy for the Korean Americans to make their case.
Following the success in Virginia, the grassroots movement has been spreading to other states with high Korean American populations, such as New York, New Jersey, and California, where they're pushing to pass similar textbook bills. Kim Han-ul, Arirang News, Washington.
Now, there is a debate going on in the United States about the Comfort Women statue placed outside of Glendale City Hall. Now, it's an exact replica of the original that can be found in front of the Japanese embassy right here in Seoul. And our Hwang Ji-hye met with key people there in Los Angeles who are bringing the humanitarian issue to light.
Since being installed last summer, the Comfort Woman Memorial statue in the city of Glendale has been at the center of controversy. The statue honors 200,000 women, mostly Korean, who were forced into prostitution for the Japanese military during World War II. Phyllis Kim, a member of the Korean American Forum of California, which led the charge to get the monument up, hopes the bronze statue educates people.
We want the people to know about the pains and sufferings of the victims and what really happened during 1930s and World War II to these women.
City officials have been under a lot of pressure to remove the statue through thousands of emails and phone calls, some even from the Japanese government. Glendale City Council member Ara Najarian says, however, that removal is not an option.
Several things for those that want to remove it. The first thing is that this statue will not be removed. It will not be taken away forever.
All this is adding pressure on the Japanese government, which has been taking an aggressive nationalistic stance recently. Representative Adam Schiff, who along with 2 other lawmakers sent a letter to Secretary of State John Kerry asking him to address comfort women issues with the Japanese government, says that such views are broadly held among American politicians. Representative Schiff was also a strong supporter of a 2007 resolution on the issue of comfort women.
They should hear an apology. And they should not hear any prominent officials in Japan speaking either with deliberate ambiguity or worse, with denial about this chapter in history.
And many residents here in Glendale say they're proud that the community they're included in is acting on an issue that needs recognition, putting the risky nationalism in Japan in an even riskier position. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News, Glendale.
Now, last night was a sleepless night for Koreans as well as those around the world who are fans of women's figure skating, and there was a bit of a controversy that may arise from the results there. Well, for that and for a wrap-up of Thursday's events, let's now turn to our Lee Tae-ho. Tae-ho.
Good afternoon, everybody. And to kick off today's coverage of the 2014 Sochi Winter Games, we have the results of the most anticipated competition of the Games. Early this morning, the women's figure skating competition came to a close. And despite skating a flawless free skate program, the result for Kim Yeon-a's final professional competition concluded with an Olympic silver medal. She finished with a free skate score of 144.19 and a total score of 219.11, almost 6 points below Russian Adelina Sotnikova's gold medal score of 224.59, despite a less than perfect program. Carolina Kostner of Italy rounded out the top three with a free skate score of 142.61. Regardless of the results, congratulations and thank you to Kim Yeon-a. And staying with the women's figure skating competition, the results of this morning's competition are making worldwide headlines. The major international sports media outlet ESPN titled their article on the result of the women's figure skating competition, Home Ice Advantage, debating the questionable scoring by judges in this morning's free skate competition. And former Olympic champion and figure skating legend Katarina Witt remarked that she was stunned by the results and didn't understand the scoring. But Ashley Wagner of Team USA, who finished the competition 7th, put it best when she remarked that fans aren't going to watch a sport where people who fall score higher and beat competitors who skate a cleaner program. And of course, Kim Yeon-a wasn't the only one skating for Team Korea in last night's free skate competition. Korea sent a trio of skaters, including Kim Yeon-a, to the Winter Games thanks to Kim's performance at the 2013 World Figure Skating Championships, and the pair of 16-year-old competitors didn't disappoint the fans in their debut. Korea's Kim Hae-jin finished 16th overall, while Park So-yeon placed 21st. Congratulations to the two on a successful debut, and see you in Pyeongchang in 2018. And now switching gears to another fan favorite at the Winter Olympics, ice hockey. The women of Team Canada's ice hockey team can rejoice once again after beating out Team USA for a 4th consecutive gold medal. The match was a thrilling one indeed, with Canada trailing 2-0 in the last period with only 3 minutes 26 seconds left in regulation, only to score 2 last-minute goals to send the match into overtime, where Team Canada pulled out a come-from-behind victory in fantastic fashion to capture Olympic gold. And the intense rivalry between the U.S. and Canada will continue later today when the men take on each other in the semifinals as well. And we wrap up today's coverage with what to watch for tonight and a look at the current medal standings. I'm Lee Tae-ho, and thank you for tuning in to another week of coverage of the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics.
International condemnation of the violence in Ukraine has done little to quell the violent clashes in the streets of Kiev. Dozens more were killed on Thursday, with police firing on crowds of protesters. Son Jung-in brings us the latest.
Thousands of anti-government protesters regained control of Independence Square in Kiev on Thursday after throwing rocks and firebombs at lines of police, who countered with snipers firing into the crowd. Authorities say more than 75 people were killed and hundreds of others have been wounded since violent clashes were sparked on Tuesday. The bloodshed came as the European Union tried to broker an end to the crisis, agreeing to impose sanctions against those responsible for human rights violations and use of excessive force in Ukraine. The EU foreign ministers decided to slap a travel ban and an asset freeze against government officials in charge, though they left the door open to a political deal by not disclosing any names. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry followed suit, saying in a statement that Washington unequivocally condemns the use of force against civilians and urged security forces to be withdrawn immediately. The demand from Kerry came shortly after U.S. Vice President Joe Biden warned Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych that America was ready to impose sanctions on officials who ordered troops to fire on protesters. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Now let's go over to Michelle Park for a weather forecast, and she stands by the Weather Center. Michelle, let's start with Sochi.
Welcome back, Kanyang. The host city of the Winter Games can expect some light rain and clouds throughout the day with a high of 14 degrees. Now moving over to Korea, we can expect a warm sunny day all over the nation, and especially for Mount Kumgang. Looks to be clear until next week for the rounds of the family reunions. Now going over to our satellite map, we can expect clear skies nationwide today. However, be advised that the level of fine dust in the atmosphere is fairly high. Now going over to our readings. Seoul will top out at 7 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak up to 9 and 11 degrees respectively. Now down on Jeju Island, it's sunny with a high of 8. Dokdo will get up to 2, while Mount Kumgang tops out chilly at -2. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Kanyang.
All right, thanks, Michelle, for that. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. But stay tuned to Arirang. We have a lot more coming your way on Early Edition at 6.